In this video, I'm going to show you how you can add cover to your property to have whitetails on it all season long. So there's 4 basic things to make cover for whitetails. That's trees, switchgrass, hinge cuts, and screens. And so starting with number 1, with trees, there's a lot of trees that you can use for whitetail cover, but there's 2 basic ones, conifers and canopy trees, that will provide a really good amount of cover for deer. And so for canopy trees, that would be oaks. And so planting oaks for deer, if you have an old pasture and you want to plant all oaks in there, you need to plant something else like red cedars on the outside edge, maybe a couple in the inside. You can't just plant all oak trees, because if you plant all oak trees, there's no diversity, and oak trees don't provide a super amount of cover like conifer trees do. Deer need that diversity and that change with the conifer trees, red cedar trees, oak trees, whatever kind of tree it is, but they need that different type of tree on the property. So making sure you have different trees on your property is really good as well, to make sure that deer have a lot of diversity. But then conifer trees, I love planting conifer trees for screens, bedding areas, thermal protection, harsh weather, bedding areas in places like that. But for conifer trees, that would be hemlock trees, red cedar trees, eastern pine trees, hybrid willow trees, stuff like that. The bushy trees that keep a lot of green on them throughout the winter even. And so those are really good trees to make sure that you have a good bedding area, screen, whatever you're planning for. But those are good trees to make sure that you have cover on your property. And so trees are a really good thing. They obviously take a long time to grow, but in the long run, trees are the best for whitetail cover. And then number 2 is switchgrass. Switchgrass gets about 6 to 7 feet tall. I've planted a little bit out here on the 42-acre farm that we have here, but I'm planting a lot more this season. I can't wait to bring that to you. Hopefully by not next week, but in 2 weeks, I'll be making videos planting switchgrass, because middle of May is my favorite time to plant switchgrass. And so we're going to be using the Groundhog Max ATV disc. Just got that, so they're sponsoring a video, so huge shout out to Groundhog Max for sending me that, and I can't wait to make a video on that and use it for food plots and switchgrass places that I can't fit a tractor into. And so that's really cool. But back to switchgrass. Switchgrass is really good. Deer don't like to bed, and I've seen this a lot on my property. Deer don't like to bed right in the middle of the switchgrass, because I mean, the switchgrass that I'm planting, I'm not planting a huge field of it. I'm planting maybe that size of a screen that's 6 foot tall. So it's not a huge field of switchgrass. And I would like to do that sometime in the future, plant a thicker, wider space of switchgrass. But it gets really tall and it'll provide cover. Deer don't necessarily like to bed right in the switch, but they like to bed on the outside. So if you have a switch, deer bed right here, there's switch in the middle, and then there's wind. The wind pushes on the switchgrass, and it does not hit the deer, and they can use that as somewhat thermal protection. But it's really good bedding. Switchgrass is really good bedding on the inside. If you just make a pocket, deer will bed right in the middle of that pocket because they have switchgrass all around them, and that provides wind resistant and a lot of other things. But they really like that for cover in their bedding areas. And I'll talk about putting both of those together in a minute. But number 3 is hinge cut. Hinge cut bedding areas are really good especially if you're knowing kind of what you're doing with it, and it's good for your property. But hinge cut bedding areas are really good. I've done a couple hinge cuts on this property, not very much because there's not too much cover, just in some of the small spaces. But hinge cuts are also really good in all wooded parcels that don't have a mixture of maybe pasture like we do here, ag fields, but just all hardwood parcels, properties with just a bunch of oaks, maybe some maple trees, saplings in there, stuff like that. But if you're cutting those and hinge cutting those, that can also offer a good amount of cover for deer. And then so for a last point number 4 is screens. So to make the trees bedding areas or screens and the switchgrass bedding areas or screens even better, it's combining the two. And I did that on I think almost all of my switchgrass plantings this year. The buck bedding area, just right down here close to the house, it had a lot of rubs in it, and we're planting a huge screen. So it's going to be a thick wall of switchgrass, and then on the outside edge of the switchgrass right next to it, we're planting red cedars and hybrid willows. So that'll be a really good screen here in a couple of years. But putting those trees together, whether it be conifer trees and switchgrass, that's my 2 favorite combinations for making cover for deer. It's putting conifer trees on the outside and putting switchgrass on the inside, and that'll make a huge screen for the deer. So if you're doing any of these, if you need to add cover to your whitetail property and you want to make sure that they're on your property all season long, I didn't have them on my property all season long last year because they left during maybe the middle of November because there wasn't enough cover, not good enough cover for them here in the winter. And so definitely working on that and hoping to have a good late season this season. But it also takes time for that stuff to grow, so you also have to be patient and waiting for all that to grow to make sure that you have a good late season hunt. But I hope this helps you if you're trying to add cover on your property. Number 1 is definitely trees. Those take a while. Switchgrass takes about 2 years. Hinge cuts will be the next season. Hinge cuts are pretty fast, but not as effective as switchgrass and trees. And screens combining both are the best with switchgrass and trees. So it'll take time for that stuff to grow, but that switchgrass is a really good, quicker alternative, and trees and switchgrass are really good in the long run. So I hope that helps you for adding cover on your property this season, and I can't wait to do all that on my property this year as well.